Hey everyone, Michael Unger here at the MacMillan Space Centre with another edition of Ask an Astronomer. And as usual, we have our astronomer, Marley Leacock. Hey Marley, how's it going?
It's good. I'm enjoying the slightly cooler weather now. It was too hot a few days ago.
Absolutely.
Oh, Michael just dropped out. So now it's just me. Okay. Well, while he figures that out, I guess I can jump right in and we can skip Michael's little beginning spiel. And what I wanted to talk about today was the Perseverance sample collection. Oh, he's back. He might be back.
Wow. Sorry about
Yeah.
that, folks. I don't know what happened there, but I assume that you had fun with Marley. Say hello to Marley's. Put in the chat if you are watching. This is a Q&A, so if you have any questions about Mars, which is going to be our main topic, or anything else, put it into the chat. We will answer all of your questions, and we're going to start with our big story about our main robot. I'm going to say main robot, but it's the latest robot that's doing a lot of work on Mars right now. And one of his missions is to learn what's going on inside of the Martian soil. So let's learn about what Perseverance has been doing, digging into the Martian soil.
Yeah, so this one, my topic this week was about like space and science delays, and largely because of Perseverance. So Perseverance was to do a sample collection. So its first sample collection step attempt was supposed to be on August 6th. And so what this is that it was going to drill into a Martian rock and take a core sample and store it. And those are the core samples that we would like to at some point retrieve is the goal for them. So Perseverance has 43 titanium sample tubes and wants to gather samples of rock and regolith, which is just broken rock and dust, for future use and analysis. And so this entire process is autonomous. So people on Earth, the scientists that work with Perseverance on Earth, give the command, the rover does it, and then they look at the data that Perseverance sends back afterwards. So basically, what the scientists did at the headquarters for Perseverance was just give the command, and then once it got its process going, they went home to bed. And so initially they got the report that yes, it was collecting, the drill bits had done what they were supposed to do, and then in the morning they found out that there was no actual sample in the tube once they went to bed and came back. So what happened there? So on the left is actually a core sample from the moon. And so this is similar to what Perseverance is trying to get from rocks. And so what happened was that the drill and the bit engaged properly, what it was supposed to do, what was meant to drill did start drilling, and the sample tube processed as intended post coring. So it did the drilling, it collected the sample or did all the steps to do that, and then put it back into the belly of Perseverance. So everything went right, all the steps went right. But when it measured the volume of the sample to do that, to see how much it got, the expected resistance was not encountered. So what this means is that in the tube that they collected, they actually have a little mechanism that presses against the sample, and the amount of resistance they get from that sample tells the scientists how much is in there. And so when they did that, it was zero. There was nothing in the tube at all. And so they ended up taking pictures of it to try to see what was going on. And so the conclusions they came to right away, and this is written by the project manager, Jennifer Tropsor, who is the project manager for Perseverance, in her blog post, which is really awesome. The Perseverance team writes blog posts every time something happens, and so you can go out and read them and kind of keep up to date. But basically, their conclusions when they first found out there was no sample was that either were able to look at the science and look at the data that did come back, and were able to determine that the core worked right. So the data they got back was not different compared to the successful Earth-based testing, because they test everything on Earth before they send it, and so that was all the same. The pictures were taken of the surrounding area, didn't show a core, so nothing had dropped out or had been missed or anything like that or broken. They didn't find any evidence of that around Perseverance. And so what they did next was use Watson, which is a very high-tech camera, aboard Perseverance, and looked at the hole they had just dug to kind of see, well, did it fall into the hole or what happened? And what they found was that the rock was too powdery. So this is actually an image of the borehole that Perseverance dug. And so they were able to derive the depth measurements and the actual in the actual photo to determine that the rock that they had drilled into resulted in small powdery fragments that were not retained because of their size and the lack of a core sample. So as you can see, there's some material at the bottom of the hole, and that's either like the core itself or the cuttings that were made as it drilled into the hole, or a combination. And they're not able to distinguish that any further given the uncertainty of what it is. And so it's like if you were to pour sand in a straw and then take the straw away, the sand all just kind of falls out and doesn't retain any shape or anything like that. That's basically what happened with this rock sample on Mars. It was just too powdery to stay.
We're basically talking about like a very almost like a sandy beach here. If you kept digging under the sandy beach, eventually you would hit sort of like a more harder sand, and that's what they're trying to get to.
Not necessarily. They have a specific amount they can take. It basically what happened is they found this rock and they're like, that rock looks like a good candidate based on all their criteria, but the rock was just a different type of rock that they had not experienced on Earth. It was just too powdery, so it looked like a good candidate on the outside, but once they got in there, it was not good at all.
So what's the result here? Are they going to keep trying with this particular rock, or are they going to try to find something else to try to get into?
Yeah, so when I on the first blog post that was posted on about the 6th or 7th of August, their main solution was we're just going to go somewhere else. So this didn't work. We're just going to leave. And so they're pretty sure after a lot of testing and looking at the data that the rock itself was the problem, not anything with Perseverance, not with anything that they had built. And because all the hardware worked right. So they're going to leave this area and heading towards the South Seta, which is a different part of Mars, as you can see on this map. In the Jezero crater, the little blue Octavia E. Butler landing site is where Perseverance landed, and then the yellow dotted path is kind of like where Perseverance will be going. So the sample was taken in the crater floor fractured rough area of the Jezero crater, what the scientists call it. And now Perseverance is heading over to the South Seta to try to take a sample there, because from imaging and things like that, from like HiRISE, on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, it's hopefully slightly different rocks will be in that area. It's got different geological signs, and so hopefully they can find something better. And this is finding a new type of rock is anticipated in early September is where they're going to go. And then recently today, Jennifer Tropser updated a blog post today. And so they're actually at this point, this image is kind of hard to see, but it's in that Perseverance is the red dot and it's heading towards the blue dot right now. And so they're going to what's called the Citadel. And so this image is from the HiRISE camera on the MRO. And so they're moving to this area called the Citadel. And this is a picture of kind of the Citadel, the rocks in the Citadel. So what they're planning to do is find a more resistant rock, so a rock that just won't crumble into nothing when they drill into it. And they've added a new step in the collection process, which is what they call a ground in the loop session. And so what this does is that it adds an extra step. Instead of drilling, closing the sample, putting it into the belly, it actually takes a moment to take pictures of the tube and then review the pictures in the tube to confirm there's something in there. So they've added an extra step to this collection, because really it was kind of a bit of a letdown almost, because they went home thinking, great, we've got the image, we've got the sample, and then they came home and there was nothing. And this extra step will let them know before they come the next day that there is a problem.
We do have one question about sort of like that previous site that in the powdery rock. So why was the ground so powdery there, sort of like geologically speaking? So sand is caused by diatoms and ground shells. So why is this area so powdery?
That's a good question. I didn't read anything that explains as to why they know. For all intents and purposes, they thought that it would be fine to sample from. So it may appear harder. And then just once they got to drilling, whatever the energy or the mechanism of drilling caused it to become this very powdery state. So it's just what Mars is made of in this particular spot, which is kind of exciting as well, because it's a failure because they didn't get a sample, but there's also a lot to learn from it because it didn't work, right? If this had worked, we wouldn't have known that rocks on Mars could get this powdery once they start as a solid form.
Right. So, but really what they want to collect is a more harder rock.
Yeah, they want to get something similar to this. So this is the lunar samples. And so they want something more like this, like a more cohesive sample that they could just put in, take out, and hold on to for us to hopefully retrieve in the future. But they haven't gotten that yet.
Well, hopefully they'll find that at the Citadel, as you say, which reminds me of like kind of Game of Thrones, so like the giant library. So hopefully this is like a giant library of rocks that they can sample from.
Yeah, so they're doing that, and they're kind of like they're definitely going to try again, but they're being a little more specific with the types of rock they're going to try with.
Pride has a question. Another question: does Perseverance have a microscope?
Does Perseverance have a Perseverance has 6 different scientific tools, and as far as I remember, and I may be wrong, it doesn't have a microscope. It has a lot of spectrometers. Basically, it does chemical analysis using lasers, as opposed to looking through a microscope, because that is more like human aided using a microscope, looking and identifying, whereas robots are better suited for like hard and fast, like numbers when it comes to chemical analysis is better for robots. So I don't think it has a microscope. No.
So this is really where a human would really help out. If they were actually there on the surface, they may be able to do some of this identification a lot quicker than what Perseverance is doing right now.
Yeah, and that's kind of the idea behind like the holding samples, for future retrieval. Perseverance can only do so much. It's a big robot. It's like about a small car size, but it can only hold so many things inside of it. And so holding onto the samples is for us to come back and get them so we can do more science on Earth. That's better suited for like a human touch.
Excellent. Anything more on Mars before we move on to some delayed missions?
Yes, so they have a contingency plan for if there's still problems, because there very well could be. And so the main one was that they just try again on the same rock, but adjust the geometry. And so this I found particularly interesting, because when I think of core samples, I think of you have rock and you just stab and you pull it out. But for Perseverance, they want one that's to be able done horizontally. And to my understanding, this means you have a rock and you come at it horizontally as opposed to vertically. So they will try to adjust the geometry so they can get a geometry setup that's more horizontal and lead to hopefully more successful drilling. And the other solution too, if it doesn't work, is just look for a better rock. So look for a rock that's harder, that's better suited, and has the right geometry to be able to drill into it horizontally. Is their contingency plans. And I hope it works. They're planning, they expect to have a rock target early next week as Percy drives into the Citadel region. But it still may take a while to get that choice, pick the choice, and then also the next steps of, okay, when are we going to attempt drilling? Because it takes a couple days to do the whole process.
Excellent. Well, hopefully we'll find some cool stuff, and I think we should send Pride so Pride can ask all the hard questions with a human astronaut to Mars. But before we do that, we do have to get some humans up there into space. And before we're going to Mars, we're going to go to the moon, and we have some information about humans going up into space.
Yeah, so this is an awesome photo because this was very fun. There's new spacesuits coming for the astronauts that will be going to the moon and again. And so with new space missions come the need for new suits because the mission has changed, right? It's not the same as it was before. The current suits that astronauts wear were designed 45 years ago for the space shuttle program. And so they're a bit outdated in terms of what we want them to be able to do. So new suits need to be built more efficiently and for more safety reasons. And so they've actually been developing these new suits for the past 14 years. They've been workshopping them. And so in the image, there are 2 people trying on new suits. The big bulky white suit on the left is worn by Christine Davis, who is actually a spacesuit engineer, which I think is the coolest type of engineer. And she works for NASA. And then she's wearing a ground prototype of the Exploration Extra Vehicle Mobility Unit, or XEMU, which is, I think, one of their better acronyms. And then the orange is Dustin Gomery, who's the project manager of the Orion Crew Survival Systems Project, and he's wearing what's called the Orion Crew Survival Suit. And so they're adding a bunch of new things. And so they are adding for the XEMU, the spacewalk suit, basically, they're adding dust tolerant features because apparently the moon is very dusty, the lunar surface very dusty, and kind of like glass shards types of dustiness. And so they need to take precautions to not inhale them, lest they damage life support systems. So they're adding dust tolerant features, able to better withstand extreme temperatures, because now we know the moon's temperatures can range from negative 157 to positive 120 degrees Celsius. More duplication of systems. So because we can make all the technology smaller, we can duplicate it and build in redundancy, which helps for safety, because if one breaks, we have a backup. mobility enhancements, so there won't be any more bunny hopping on the moon. They did not know that the lunar surface was so soft, and so they've taken that into account, and there won't be all this stumbling, and a better communication system as well. The flight launch and entry suit, or the orange suit, is coming out with helmets in more than one size, which I didn't know that they were one size fit all helmets. It feels like a huge oversight on behalf of NASA. I feel like, why don't you have small, medium, large helmets? Orange for visibility in the event that they have to bail out earlier. And a re-engineered zippers for easier getting in and out of it. And they'll be custom fit with touchscreen compatible gloves and so much more, like interchangeable parts depending on the mission, as well as liquid cooling garments to worn underneath the suit, more easier to breathe, more breathable and easier to build. And each suit, the survival suit also has like a personal survival kit. So with like a location beacon, a knife, a signaling kit with a mirror, strobe light, flashlights, whistles, light sticks. So like super prepared in the event of emergency, or all these things they're adding to the suits. But
What
with
would you
that,
put in? What would you put in your personal survival suit?
I don't know. I feel like some snacks. Like they really there's no granola bars or anything. But then I was like, they probably won't be down there for that long if they have to bail out. Like it'll probably be pretty quick recovery. But I would pack some snacks.
Yeah.
It's just me. But all of those things are very expensive and complicated to build. And so this has led to a delay in the Artemis mission. So the plan was to land on the moon again in 2024, put humans on the moon again in 2024, but with no suits, there can be no astronauts. And so there will be no 2024 landing. And so there's actually been a 20-month delay in designing, verifying, and testing the suits. And that's a combination of budgetary concerns and revamping things due to COVID-19 and things like that. But a lot of it does come down to money. It actually is about, they've invested about a grand total of $1 billion into the development of these suits. There's also been technical challenges because they're not just building two suits for the two astronauts that will go. They have to make the two qualification suits that will be used a demonstration suit so it can be tested on the International Space Station, and two lunar flight suits. So really they're building a minimum of 5 suits at a time, not just the 2 immediately. So all of that means that there will be no people on the moon in 2024, instead April 2025 at the earliest. And even then, I think it's going to be a bit longer than that.
Well, not surprisingly, there's usually always delays in this. And of course, you don't want to send up any astronauts with a faulty suit. But this is all brand new stuff because, like you said, Marley, like the spacesuit has generally been unchanged until recently. So I'm glad that they're finally looking at it from a design perspective.
Yeah, especially because there hasn't really been a lot of mission change since the space shuttle program. It was going to the International Space Station and coming back. And so it was very much like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Like it's working fine. Why mess with it? But now that they're planning to do different missions, that means a different suit is going to be needed to be better suited for what they're doing. So it makes sense. I'm sad it's delayed, but I trust the spacesuit engineers to get it working again.
Absolutely. So is this the only mission that's been delayed? There's been a few delays that
There's
we're
been a
having
few
recently,
delays.
right?
There's one more. The Starliner mission has been delayed. And so this is a Boeing spacecraft, the Boeing CST-100 Starliner spacecraft. It's reusable, and it's part of NASA's commercial crew program. And so it's designed to help deliver crew and cargo to and from the International Space Station. And so this image is of a Starliner attached to the Atlas V rocket, waiting the second orbital test flight, or OF2. The uncrewed test flight, so just testing things out. It's reusable to up to 10 times and designed to carry 7 astronauts or less astronauts and more cargo. Like it's really going to be useful for shuttling things to and from the International Space Station. And so its launch schedule was actually meant to launch Friday, July 30th. And if you tuned in, I think it was last week, we talked about how the unplanned thruster firings of the Nuka module tilted the International Space Station on the 29th. And so because of that, this launch was canceled because it was meant to dock with the International Space Station. And if the International Space Station's spinning, nothing's going to be able to dock with it. So that was scrapped. So they rescheduled it for Tuesday, August 3rd. And on Tuesday, August 3rd, they found some unexpected valve position indications. So something was going wrong in the rocket. So they scrapped Tuesday and moved it to Wednesday for Wednesday, August 4th. And on Wednesday, August 4th, early in the morning or late at night on the 3rd, they canceled the launch for further inspection and testing. And it has not been rescheduled. So it's been postponed indefinitely, as far as I'm aware. I checked it today, but there's still no new launch date. But this is good. It sucks whenever a launch is canceled, but this is good because it's better to check everything on the ground as opposed to having a catastrophe in the air. Even though it's an uncrewed mission, there's still a lot of money that went into building this and developing this, and like an explosion would be catastrophic. Rebuilding all of that would take much longer than trying to just fix the valves, which they are doing right now. They fixed 9 of the 13 valves that were indicating problems. And the team isn't letting the launch window dictate the pace, so they're actually working very hard to make sure they're fixed and fixed properly as opposed to rushing to get a launch. A big thing is that they still don't know what caused the valves to malfunction, so what caused them to read out these error positions, but they've determined a way to fix it, which is good. But I personally don't think that they're going to have a new launch date until they figure out what caused the problem with the valves. Because it's great that you can fix it, but if you don't know what caused the problem in the first place, that's a bigger worry because it may be a deeper issue in the Perseverance, in the Starliner itself. You
Well,
jumped.
wow, we are actually having a fire alarm in the
That's
building.
what that is.
If you can believe it.
Yeah.
So you know what, Marley? I guess we're going to have to prematurely end Ask an Astronomer.
That's fine. I'm out of
Thank you so much,
slides.
folks, for joining us. We will be back in 2 weeks, hopefully alive. See, just like NASA, they are having their alarm bells going off for their launches, and we are as well.
Yeah,
Thanks for everyone for joining us here on Ask an Astronomer, and we'll see you in 2 weeks, hopefully in not burnt.
we'll be fine. See you.